again, and my row began. Such is the nature of the game. I've had, I woke up early, but I've been up for a couple of hours, and then I started watching something to occupy myself. I don't know how to say it. Been long thinking about all the problems with society, and I've actually been watching this Zeitgeist Moving Forward thing, which I don't, so far I haven't seen the conclusion of it yet, but I don't agree with their methodology. I mean, it's logically, from a certain perspective, logically, it makes sense, but therein lies the problem, and that's why I just kind of made that gesture with my eyes, my eyebrows, is because I just realized something, is that logic is perspective based. I think this is a breakthrough, another breakthrough. I've had two massive breakthroughs now this morning. The big thing I realized is that, well, I'll start with the ultimate, or the big answer, which will require questions, but the big answer is that the solution to a nonviolent transition paradigm shift, the nonviolent solution to the world's problems, is a change in perspective to the universal perspective. If everyone can see from the universal perspective, then, humans are by very nature selfish. This is natural, it's undeniable, it's unchangeable. Humans are selfish. So from a universal perspective based logic, from ultimate logic, the only true logic, so via the only true logic, the universal perspective is necessary because of selfishness. And if an individual has universal perspective and they are selfish, any selfish action will be from a universal perspective, and thus anything selfish will be to the benefit of all. It's absolutely fundamentally correct that if we can each individually attain universal perspective, we will all be equal, we will all be ideal, we will all be ultimately happy, we will be the best we could be, we will always, forever, do everything to benefit everyone, including and especially ourselves. Because who holds the universal perspective but ourselves? Of course, this does beg questions, as I mentioned previously. Why is this necessary? I wrote some notes, and I'll kind of review them here. I'll just read this. The way to solve the world's problems is to get everyone seen from the same perspective. The only way that can logically work is to choose the universal perspective itself. In the case of us humans, it is as an inhabitant of a planet receiving sustainable and unsustainable energy from a nearby star. This obtaining the universal perspective requires use of science. But obtaining the universal perspective is, in and of itself, in some respects, by a universal definition of, as such, a religion, a set of beliefs. So yes, it would be a replacement for faith-based spirituality, deism, I should say. But all that aside, I mean, that's transition, and taking the universal perspective is the ultimate goal of religions. And if we can attain that, we can see that was the goal. Buddhism is, I think, the best example in our civilization thus far. All that aside, anyway. Once everybody sees from the universal perspective, change will necessitate itself. That's Dave's company leaving. See how it affects me. So I wrote, the precursor to the solution must be helping people see that hedonism limits pleasure, because you can't see the universal perspective because you are seeing your own pleasure, and you can't see past your own pleasure. But hedonism is limited pleasure that you can't even see past, which you can't even see past. And I wrote down, well, this is experimental. I'll think about this before I document it. It's still written down. One thing I wrote as a note while I was watching this Zeitgeist thing was that universal perspective eliminates all isms. If you see from the perspective of the human species as a member, as inhabitants of the planet Earth, if you can see that, then you act in your own self-interest, which is everyone's self-interest. There is no belief system to follow. There is no capitalism to make things happen. There is no need for motivation. There only is selfishness. And this is what is so difficult about hedonism, is because, and this also proves or demonstrates logic-based perspective, because to a person in hedonism, which is a level of moral development, a very, very low at stage 2, those in that hedonism are of a perspective that enjoyment must be immediate, now, and all the time. For myself only, at anything and any other expense, including other people, including the person's own future. So a hedonist will enjoy the moment at the expense of tomorrow. Thus, drinking binges, addiction, recreational drug use, things like that. They are hedonism because the person enjoys the pleasure now and doesn't care about the consequences later, and that's why they keep going back, because their perspective is enjoyment now. So the solution to addiction, the solution to everything, is to increase the moral development, to expand the perspective outward, which is how and what defines moral development. You expand the perspective out, and once you achieve cosmic transcendentalism, stage 6, stage 7, moral maturity, moral development, the perspective is universal, absolute universal. So ideal society, the goal of society should be to achieve and maintain permanently universal perspective, the highest level of moral development. If that can be achieved, no violence is ever necessary, no change is ever necessary, or no violence, no power. There is no need for the biggest thing that I wrote down is that for any of these changes to happen to society, to make it where it needs to be, that are expressed in Zeitgeist moving forward, there must be a violent upheaval. There must be violence of some kind, massive violence. There must be a massive change in population. Achieving universal perspective eliminates that, absolutely eliminates that, because everyone will act from selfishness, and it will benefit everyone. So those who start to achieve it can see benefit and become, and because they are acting, and because they're expanded their perspective to include others, suddenly making other people see what they see is acting in that person's own self-interest. So you can see where I'm going here is that selfishness never changes. It is universal constant. We are humans. We are selfish. But it's our perspective that changes what selfishness does, what its effects are. When we achieve a greater level of moral development, of expanded perspective, more people, more beings, more of our world is included in our selfishness. We don't lose our identity. I am as close to universal perspective as can be. I am as close to the highest levels of moral development that can be. I am a very selfish person, but do I appear to act out of my own self-interest? This movie is not for my own self-interest. It is for the self-interest of those in my sphere, in my perspective, which is everyone, the planet included. Even the anger I have. If you consider the anger, the rants that I've included in this, hopefully, or if you read them online, or if you know me and you've read these rants, or if you just think about anger that I would have, think about that anger from a universal perspective. My anger at individuals is really not at individuals, it's at their perspective. It's at an element of that individual, and it is frustration, but that individual is thinking from their own individual here and now perspective. It's like a drug addict, imagine something you've done that you know you were going to regret the next day. What do you think of the person that tells you, are you sure you want to do this? Do you really want to drink 15 beers tonight? Or you're going to regret it in the morning? What do you think of that person? You hate that person. Guess what? That's why I receive the hatred I receive. And this doesn't explain to you who hate me for being this way. It explains it to me, and it helps me understand. And because it helps me understand, it helps me deal with it. And this is tremendous. Oh God, I'm so exhausted now. Oh, what else did I write down? I'll continue on my thing. If we want immortality as this is the defining the universal perspective. I wrote again. The way to solve the world problems is to get everyone seen from the same perspective. The only way that can logically work is to choose the universal perspective itself. In the case of us humans, that perspective is as an inhabitant of a planet receiving sustainable energy from a nearby star. So this is beginning the definition of universal perspective, which we have to agree on. And I believe that the universe is that ultimate definition. If we want immortality as a species, we must see ourselves in terms of each other's needs as a unit, both as a species and as a planet. We must then decide if we should exist forever apart from our world, take our world with us, or go down with the ship. But what if there are others? What if there are other species on other worlds? Then it becomes the universal perspective. Do we, as a universe, want to survive forever? And in those perspectives, individual sacrifice becomes easy. And I'm dealing with that now because I'm realizing that perceptions people are having of my trying to get my needs met are that I'm being selfish. Me trying to get a 2-bedroom housing voucher, for example. Someone might see it as me trying to take away housing from someone else. And there's a reason I wrote a note to talk to my doctor, is that I'm not asking to take away benefits from the benefit pool, because for me to have a 2-bedroom voucher is for me to have someone living with me to help me out. And the only people that qualify are people that don't aren't productive members of society, that are sick or don't want to work or whatever. And those are people that would need these benefits. So what I'm actually doing is creating efficiency. I am making housing available to someone else by asking for a 2-bedroom voucher, because I am housing someone that makes other housing available to someone that has a need for housing that has this benefit. So this is logic from the universal perspective, but they see it from their own perspective. They don't see the complete picture. See what else is. I've got some shit going on with my landlord outside, so I'm kind of being vigilant here. Yeah, in universal perspective, selfishness is good. Fear of, oh yes, this is another big one. Fear of inevitable collapse causes humans to lose empathy. So they mistakenly deal with the stress, but also it guarantees collapse. So something that has to happen to achieve this universal perspective is to eliminate this fear. But achieving this universal perspective would eliminate this fear. So that it has to be addressed, but it would be addressed by this achievement. And of course this begs the question, how do we achieve this? I'm sure there are a lot of other questions. I probably haven't explained why this is needed. But I think that if I don't have time to put that in here, then I just suggest you watch Zeitgeist moving forward. Pay particular attention to 1 as a background, to 2, kind of pay attention to 3 and 4, and I'll withhold judgment until the end. But remember that the best way to achieve what needs to be achieved for the human species is through achievement of the universal perspective. It is the only way to guarantee nonviolent transition and equality and equal opportunity for everyone. It is the only way to achieve fairness, because it is taking everyone in consideration. And it doesn't make selfishness evil, because selfishness is accepted. It just means that someone who doesn't see the universal perspective just needs to be matured by others. That's all that it means. It just means that they haven't learned yet. Isn't it wonderful to see things that way? Because it helps me deal with everyone else that affects me adversely like this. Is that I'm gonna have to turn this camera on for my landlord's about to fucking be violent with me. But it helps me see that people aren't out to get me, or they don't hate me or whatever. They're just not morally mature yet. And I'm going to have to work on dealing with that, and understanding that, and remembering it. And that's where the brain damage is difficult. But at least this is documented.